Right, guys, welcome back to the second episode of Hare and Tortoise. First of all, thank you very much for last week's response. We got a good amount of feedback. It was great, to be honest. A good few comments. Both of us got a few DMs as well, which was really nice because we're obviously a bit unsure. We're just starting off, so seeing how it goes. But yeah, we both enjoy it and hopefully we'll keep it going for a fair while. But anyway, today we've got a few different topics lined up. I think we're going to start with kind of warm-ups and that kind of area, aren't we, Lee? And then progress into some other areas. So yeah, warm-ups. Where would you like to start, Lee, on that?
I think the first thing is not enough people do them,
Yeah, yeah.
or if they do them, they do them kind of half-assed. It's
Mm,
uh, before we started this, I was kind of just thinking back to warm-up stuff, and the first thing that keeps coming into my head is everyone sees it at a race or a training and track event or whatever. You always have that guy that's in the background who's doing some ballistic stretching where they're pulsing in and out of their calf stretch or hamstring stretch or something like that. And I
mm.
think the fact that we're still seeing that now, despite the fact that ballistic stretching has been disproven to do more harm than good.
So ballistic, is that when you just holding it in one position kind of
So
thing?
ballistic is where you pulse in and out of it. So let's say you're stretching out your calf. It's
Yeah.
almost like you're doing a calf raise. So where you're coming in
Right.
or lowering up and down out of the movement.
Okay.
People do it for their quads and things like that. And it's actually been shown to do more harm than good. So the fact that we're
Yeah.
still seeing people do that shows that obviously a lot of people probably still aren't as kind of aware of, one, why we warm up, and two, how we should warm up.
Definitely. Yeah.
I don't know what you've got experience wise in terms of that or what you've seen.
No, I'd genuinely agree with that. Like, obviously, I've learned, bits and bobs over the years. I used to, as a lot of people do, step out the door and start running straight away. Nowadays, warm-ups, like every single run, I'll at least walk for a few minutes, and then I'll usually do a few kind of dynamic stretches, whether it's just high knees or bum flicks or whatever. Nothing too complicated. A few lunges, leg swings, that kind of thing. I've learned that kind of static stretching maybe isn't the best before a run as well as ballistic. But yeah, you're totally right. Like I've got next door neighbours that I see head out for runs every now and then, and similar to what I used to do, they'll step out and they're sprinting off straight away.
Yeah.
And I've just come to learn like it's really simple. I did a video on this recently. Like you're getting your heart rate gradually up, mentally you're just feeling kind of ready to go as you kind of just get in the zone of doing the run.
Yeah.
Scientists will be able to go into it in more detail than me, but it's basically you're basically getting your body ready for action instead of 0 to 100%.
That's the key thing that you just said there. And again, like you said, scientists might be able to put it into some more technical terms, but we don't need to. In terms
Yeah,
of a warm up, it's as simple as preparing you for what you're about to do. As you just said there, that is literal all we need to focus on. And obviously, the first part of that is elevating the pulse, elevating heart rate, so that we obviously, like you said there, not just going from 0 to 100. In terms of performance, by warming up, like you said there, and even if it is just doing a few drills and mobility exercises, we're also then priming the brain to start firing the right muscles in the right sequence, ready for running. Which there's still a technique to running. Whilst we might not focus on it, and it should be more of a natural thing, we still want to obviously then get the brain ready to start, carrying out our run gait cycle. And then obviously, mobility side of things, which we'll go into a bit more, is loads of people are deficit in certain ranges of motion. So doing a few dynamic stretches beforehand just means that again, your joints and muscles are potentially going to be moving through better ranges of motion than what they were before you started the warm up, which again then is going to lead to more efficiency when it comes to running and less likely to build up compensation. So warm ups are absolutely vital to any form of training. Everyone that goes to the gym or engages in team sports do a warm up, but for some reason runners think that they're immune to that sort of thing, and that just going
mm,
out for a slow jog is not a warm up for a fast run or a tempo run or anything like that. You need to do some more stuff, and the more intense the exercise and the shorter the exercise, the more important a warm up becomes. So
yeah,
for yourself, like doing interval work on the track, 200, 400s, or even just going out for sort of 5K races, a decent warm up is actually more important for athletes like yourself than it is necessarily maybe for someone who's running 50 miles. because obviously they have got a longer period to be able to build up that
Yeah.
motivation. However, they still need to be doing the mobility side of things. But yeah, a lot of people tend to, like I said, if they're doing a tempo or a sprint session, go for a few steady jogs and then that's it, and then they're straight into it.
Mm.
And then they wonder why they get a hamstring strain. So yeah, so for me, warm ups are a big thing. And again, like you said, they don't need to be complex. Leg swings, lunges, just some basic dynamic stretching for the lower body. Also for the upper body, because obviously we want good postures. But again, arm swings and stuff like that are just a great thing that you can do anyway. You don't need any kit, and you could do just before you go out the door.
That's the thing, like you can do a lot of it just in your room before you head out. So like there's no excuse even in the winter with bad weather, you can do it regardless. And I think you make a good point. Runners kind of think, I guess because they're warming up in the same way, they're gonna kind of be doing the activity. They don't think they need to kind of do that. But the reality is, when you're doing the warm up, the range of motion, particularly so important. Like, funnily enough, like I went for a run today with one of my next door neighbours. Obviously, I was kind of allowing him to do what he wanted to do, so we didn't do a warm up or anything. It was the first time I hadn't done one for kind of months because obviously I usually run on my own, and I could just feel like you're just going from 0 to 100. It's such a big pressure on your body. I know it's a bit of an extreme example, but some people find it easy to picture it this way. It's literally, if you just crawl out of bed, and then you suddenly go and imagine that. It's like that, but obviously less extreme because you will be walking before you
But
go.
is though. It's very much like that, and some people do.
Mm,
To be fair, some people will do their run first thing in the morning. They'll get out of bed, get their running kit on, and go straight out. So
yeah.
straight away, you've just been laid down for hopefully at least 7 to 8 hours because that's how much sleep you should be having.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you think about you're going to be a little bit stiff, a little bit immobile, especially as an older athlete. All right, where warming up again is
Mm.
even more important as you age. But yeah, so some people literally are doing that, going from getting up, waking up and then going straight out for a long run without warming up correctly. And like I said, it's not that it's gonna guarantee that you don't injure yourself, but it helps massively reduce the risk of injury.
Mm.
But like I said, there's also the performance benefits
But
to it.
yeah,
Like I said, when we lift weights, we do warm up sets to again get the nervous system firing the right sequence, the right amount of force, and things like that, so that we can perform better on our heavier sets when we lift weights. It's exactly the same for running. You're absorbing forces every time your foot hits the ground. So the more efficient you can prime your body to do that, distribute those forces whilst running, the better. Therefore, you're going to be more economical.
definitely. Yeah. So as you say, it's injury and performance. And what was I just gonna say? Oh yeah, I think that puts a lot of people off. When I first started running, and I was just kind of running, down the French field where park run is.
Yeah,
You'd see people obviously doing their warm-ups, running a lot, and the first thing that comes into your head as a beginner runner is why they're doing that. They're going to get tired before they run.
yeah.
They're not going to perform as well. Like you hear people like all the time, oh, they're going to be tired. They're not going to do well. Why they're running before they run? Which it's totally understandable when you're a beginner runner. You don't know the ins and out. So yeah, I think there's a lot of barriers to kind of get over for these for a lot of people. But once they know why you do it, and for injury and for performance, I think it's a no-brainer really. As you say, it can take 5-10 minutes at most. Like if you do it well.
Absolutely. 5-10 minutes is all you need before you go for a run. And then going back to that park run side of things, like I said before, the shorter the distance, the more important a run to ramp up that heart rate. So
Mm,
if you think as you go into running, obviously you have the nervous system kicks in, heart rate increases, and certain hormones are released. So if you go from 0 to 100, that can actually be slowed down in terms of that process
yeah.
compared to you take the time to build up your heart rate before you actually start the event. So even though people say you might be a bit fatigued after you've just done a warm up, if you do the warm up correctly, you'll actually be much quicker and settle into your pace much quicker than someone who just starts off, without any warm up prior to going into something like a hard 5K effort.
Definitely. Like for 5Ks now, or any race to be fair, I'll always finish with kind of a few sprints or
Yeah,
strides as some people call them.
yeah,
Just because, you go in at race pace, obviously for a short amount of time. It's not gonna tire you out doing, 30, 40 meters of sprint. It
definitely.
gets you ready to go. And yeah, I couldn't recommend that enough. Like your body's, thinking, right, we're ready to go here. So as soon as you go on the start line, you're ready for action.
Definitely. Like I said, mate, it's prepping the body. Just
Mm.
going back to that same point, preparing the body for what you're about to do. If you're going to be going out for a hard 5K effort, you want to do a bit of prep at that similar pace, like I said, whether it's through strides and stuff like that. If you're going out for a tempo run, you maybe want to do just some shorter tempo paced intervals, like I said, 30, 40 meters, just to again prime the body, prime the muscles, prime the brain.
What is your usual warm up routine when you go?
So for me, when it comes to like I said, easy runs and the long run stuff, exactly pretty much what you said. So I will do forward leg swings, lateral leg swings or side leg swings, backwards arm swings, just so I can really focus on opening up the chest and stuff a bit more rather than forward ones, because obviously most of us tend to be rounded through the shoulders. So going
Yeah,
back through the arms helps pull the shoulders back, open up the chest. And then I'll do toe flicks and heel kicks. So just kicking the toes out to the front just to prep the calves and the ankles. And then obviously just kicking the heels up to the bum just to dynamically go through a bit of range on the hamstrings and the hips. And then I'll usually use high knees as my little ramp. So
yeah,
then do that obviously. And then just to get a little bit more intensity, I'll just do a few lengths of high knees with the arm drives, just again, mimic some of the motion. Obviously, high knees is a good running drill in general anyway, but obviously, because you can do it quite quickly, it gets the heart rate up a little bit as well. So I'll do
definitely.
that, and then I'll just walk for a little bit, like I said, just to allow the heart rate to settle before then going into the run. Um,
Yeah,
exactly the same as you. If I'm doing something that's a bit faster, I'll just do some strides to start with.
yeah. I mean, it's simple stuff, really, is it? It's not hard to do. You can find lots of good routines online. Just as we said at the start, just stay away from ballistic and static as well, right? Is not,
Yeah,
recommended anymore. It used to be, right?
yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, static stretching is always coming in and out of favor. Um,
Mm.
So at the moment, the reason why we sort of tell people not to do static stretching at the start of training is because now obviously you've lengthened the muscle and maybe helped it relax a little bit more. It's not able then to maybe contract as forcefully and generate as much force. And obviously when it comes to running, obviously we need to absorb force from the ground and then obviously push back into the floor to propel us forwards. So what it might mean is you're not as economical when it comes to running. Same with strength training, you might not be able to
Yeah,
produce as
yeah.
much power and therefore may struggle to lift as heavier weights. So it's not that it's going to necessarily do anything dangerous or bad. It's just from a performance standpoint, it could
All
hinder,
right. Okay.
especially if you're doing things like sprints and stuff where you are relying on real high amounts of force to go fast. It could potentially hinder your times to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's not going to cause any risk of damage or injury and anything. It's more from a performance standpoint that we shouldn't do static
Oh,
stretching.
I assume that was the main kind of thing that put people off. It increased the chance of injury, but maybe not. No.
No, so if you think in terms of stretching, generally you're going to probably increase range of motion just, a little bit, especially if you're only doing sort of 15, 20, 30-second stretches. You're not going to actually lengthen the muscles or relax the muscles that much anyway. So for someone that's maybe really, really lacking range of motion, like I said, really inflexible, always getting kind of tightness and cramps and stuff like that before they go. Obviously, it could be a lot of other reasons, but one thing that they could potentially get away with is doing a little bit of static stuff at the start to try and increase range of motion and help relax the muscles a little bit.
Right. Okay.
Especially if they're just going out for easy runs or steady runs. Like I said, I wouldn't still recommend it for anyone who's doing sprints or hill reps or anything like that. But you've just got to take it case by case. Like I said, if someone's really inflexible, then there may be a case for them to do some static stretching at the start of a session and just accept that slight lack of performance gains. But obviously, range of motion is more important in terms of reducing the risk of injury.
Yeah, definitely an interesting topic as well, and it'd be interesting to speak about cooldowns in future episodes as well, because obviously that's pretty much neglected. That's probably something I still neglect as well, especially after a kind of hard race when it's the last thing you want to do. But yeah, we can talk about that in a future episode.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, let us know in the comments if you do warm up, if you don't, what you do. It'd be interesting to see
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, I think it'd be a good time now to move on to different areas of the body. What do we neglect? I know myself, probably the hip is the main area, maybe the glutes in recent years, which are obviously both very important for running, especially the glute. Well, both are super important, but glutes, people call them the firing muscles for running. Um, and yeah, it's just been two areas I've neglected, and probably a reason why I've got injured a few times because of those kind of weaknesses. So I've tried to address those through different exercises. But yeah, what would you say? Would you say those are typical areas we neglect, or?
So if we're looking from um, a sort of injury standpoint, the glutes, like you said, there are absolutely one of the key muscle groups that we need to strengthen, purely because they obviously help with external rotation around the hip. They help with hip extension as well, and they are a big stabilizing muscle for the pelvis. So basically, everything that we need to run, a lot of that comes from the glutes in terms of forward propulsion. And like I said, every time we take one foot off the ground to stop our pelvis from dropping from side to side, again, the glutes are a big contributor to that movement. Um, so obviously that instability in the pelvis could then, move down the body to lead to instability at the knee and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, glutes absolutely are one of the big things that I would talk about in terms of strength. So if you look at common injuries, one of the most common ones is some form of knee issue. So whether that's IT band syndrome, because obviously, yes, it's to do with inflammation of the IT band, but most people then suffer with knee pain on the outside of their knee. And then you've got patellofemoral pain, runner's knee. Those seem to be the most common injuries that, at least what sort of research and a lot of books I've read that say are the most common injuries. But from my perspective as well, a lot of people suffer with shin splints and calf.
Mm.
So,
That's
go on.
that's the one injury I haven't really had, shin splints, but pretty much anyone that messages me, or loads of people that message me, shin splints is the one that they seem to struggle with. But I can't really give advice because the one I haven't really had. So
Well, yeah. So if we go and talk about the reasons why, again, it's case by case, and that's the key. And
mm,
obviously, you know, I'm not a physio, so I'm not necessarily going to try and diagnose someone. However, we can still talk about a lot of the common things, common causes, and common fixes. But if you are obviously in pain, I'd always recommend getting an assessment.
yeah,
Like obviously, a lot of it can be down to strength and mobility. So, someone like myself can assess that person, look at their strength around the calves, the hamstrings, the glutes, and look at obviously their mobility around the lower body. But generally, we can say most of the injuries that runners suffer with, especially things like shin splints or runner's knee, are either down to too big of an increase in training volume or load or intensity, or they lack the strength or range of motion to be able to do what they're doing. And that's kind of the most common things, unless you've got an actual medical condition such as you've torn the ACL or the meniscus in your knee, or you've torn your Achilles or something like that. Most of it will be down to, just like I said, general soft tissue stuff causing issues around joints, which is, like I said, because of a lack of strength and range of motion, or you've just done too much too quickly for your body to handle.
yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. As I said, I haven't suffered with calves, but um, how would you, uh, if say you did have shin splints, how would you go about kind of fixing that? Would you say?
So
What?
first thing I would do is ask about their weekly mileage. So, kind of get an insight into what they've been running the last few weeks, in terms of mileage increase or frequency of run sessions increase or just speed increase. Because like I said, straight away, if they've made some real big jumps, then that could potentially have caused, like I said, that issue with the shin splints. So that'd be number one.
Mm,
Then number two would be looking at their strength of their hamstrings and their calves, um,
okay.
and also doing some capacity tests on them. So it's one thing to look at their general strength, but it's also another thing to look at their capacity. So do they fatigue too quickly? Because again, there's some normative data we can look at. So for example, single leg calf raises at a sort of 1 second tempo, we should be hitting 40 to 50 reps per leg, and obviously they should be relatively close together. So
Yeah.
if they're one of them straight away is maybe significantly less than the other, then obviously one calf is doing more work than the other. So again, that can cause tension around that muscle, which can then cause tension around the shin as well, because obviously it all inserts through the ankle, through the knee, and around the shin bone. So you think about shin splints itself is usually just tension around the muscles around that bone. It's not actually obviously anything to do with the shin itself. So yes, you'd look at that. Equally, if the hamstrings are weak, and again not doing their job, or they don't have the capacity and they start to fatigue, then again the calves may be taking up some of that slack, which again is overloading them and causing that like I said, that pain. And like I said, that's where an increase in mileage and a lack of strength kind of combined together. So they may have been running a little bit where they're getting away with it because the hamstrings aren't fatiguing as much. They start increasing the mileage, and then it just starts to show that weakness even more and more. Just like when we lift weights, if we start to lift heavier and heavier and heavier, and we've got an asymmetry and imbalance, you may get away with it at some sub-maximal weights, but as you start getting heavier, it starts creeping in more and more, and you start to see that get exposed. Exactly the same with running.
Yeah, so were you saying a good base kind of test for your calf strength is, can you do 40 to 50? Is that on each foot?
Yeah, so on each leg, 40 to 50 on each leg. So do obviously one leg first, do as many as you can till failure, and record how many you get. Then have a breather, do it on the other leg again till failure. And it's a 1 second up, 1 second down. So a nice controlled tempo. And obviously making sure you're doing it on a step or something so you can get.
Right, I was going to ask that, yeah.
Yeah, rather than just doing it on a flat floor, ideally you want it on a little step so you can drop the heel just below the toes, and obviously then go into maximal plantar flexion through the foot, so coming right onto the balls of the feet. But yeah, so that's a good one. And then we can do a sort of a feet elevated glute bridge slash hamstring bridge to test the capacity of the hamstrings as well. I can always post a link up or something like that if people want to, because I've got a couple of videos on my channel as well going through those tests. But yeah, so like I said, the key thing with any injury is to be assessed, like we talked about last week, because otherwise we're just guessing at the reasons. But like I said, for me, generally, the calf capacity test or the hamstring test usually reveals a lot. And then obviously from there, if we have found a deficit, it's then going back and strengthening those areas. So again, in terms of calves, the test is also the solution. So building up some strength in calf raises, but going beyond body weight. Because again, remember, we're potentially absorbing 2 to 3 times our own body weight every time our foot hits the ground. So it's not that we need to calf raise 2 to 3 times our body weight, but obviously we want them to be a little bit stronger than just moving our own body weight. So starting to incorporate some dumbbells or a barbell and just taking it a little bit further in terms of that strength, maximal strength, lower reps, higher weights, all that good stuff. But also some people just do calf raises with obviously a straight leg, which hits the gastrocnemius, so the big part of the calf on the back of the leg. But you also have the soleus muscles that run up and down the side of the calf, or down the side of the gastroc, and they are much harder to target. And again, if they're weak, potentially can help contribute to shin splints. So that's where you've got to look at doing stuff from a bent knee position. So doing calf raises, but with a bent knee, so your knee stays completely bent the whole time, and then that will target the soleus more. So you want to do a combination of the two.
Right, very interesting. As you say, it's important to note for every case it's kind of different. It could be a variety of reasons. For my hip injury, to kind of test it, it was kind of similar, like trying to get 40 to 50 reps. But I don't know the exercise, but it's basically lying down on my side and I lift the leg up, like the legs are on top of each other, and then you're lifting it up with a resistant band or not.
Yeah, was that with the leg straight?
Yeah, leg straight, yeah.
So that's just a side lying abduction, which again is a great test for sort of capacity of your hip external rotators, which is like your glute med and your glute max. So the glute muscles around the sides of your thighs, basically.
Yeah, I was in a call last week with some physios from New York. They do like this video call every week, and they were kind of speaking or reminding people that a lot of people forget that running is kind of a single leg sport. Like obviously it's left, then right, then left, then right. So if you can kind of get, I'm assuming that strength and balance on one foot, it can make a big difference to your kind of just overall posture, but strength and kind of form during running.
Definitely. So if you think every time your foot hits the ground, obviously the foot, the ankle, all the muscles around the calf and the shin, your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, and all the smaller muscles around the hips, all of them have to work overtime to keep all the joints stable. So if you've not got the strength in the muscles around the leg, then that means then the joints are going to start to move abnormally, which then can result in pain, whether that's knee pain, ankle pain, foot pain, anything like that. And again, like I said, we're going back to a strength issue. Look at physios. Whenever they test you for an injury, in terms of your initial rehab, what do they always give you? They always give you strength work.
Yeah.
Yes, it may be body weight or banded stuff to start with, but it's still resistance training. It's still strength work. The key is obviously once you've gotten out of pain and rehabbed with the basic exercise that you usually get, you need to take it a step further, because obviously the reason you got there in the first place is a weakness in certain areas. So you need to start targeting that and taking it beyond, which is why, again, runners need to get in the gym and start doing strength training. Again, it doesn't mean you have to be a power lifter. It doesn't mean we're starting to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's that we should be doing some challenging weights for those lower repetitions, the sort of 6 to 8 rep range, not doing like back squats with 15 to 25 reps where you've got an empty bar. You need to be doing 6 to 8 reps with building up to squatting your own body weight. Look at Mo Farah. He can squat 2 times his body weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously that's one of the things why he's improved his speed over the years. But yeah, so for the knee side of things, definitely that. And one thing I just want to talk about that in terms of strength as well, just to finish up on that, is so every time your foot hits the ground, you absorb those forces. Your quads and your calves have to contract what we call eccentrically. So those muscles lengthen to absorb that force. Now, eccentric contraction simply means that, like I said, the lengthening of muscle. So if you think of a squat, it's the lowering phase of the squat is what's called the eccentric phase.
Right.
In terms of eccentric strength, a lot of people tend to be really weak in terms of being able to control that eccentric portion. So again, if you look at like a single leg squat, when someone does a single leg squat, they kind of almost just flop into the bottom of the squat and then stand back up because they don't have the eccentric strength in their quadriceps. So if they're lacking that weakness there, then obviously they're going to be lacking it when it comes to absorbing those forces in running. So building some good eccentric strength in your calf raises and your single leg squats will be really important. So it's a key of not just doing them, but doing them with the kind of what we call a tempo. So a slow, controlled movement. So on your calf raises, it can be explode up and then really lower down slowly back to the start, explode up. So that's what we call an eccentric or a negative rep. And you could do the same with your single leg squats, whether it's lunges, split squats, or step ups or whatever. Just really focus on that smooth, controlled motion.
Definitely, yeah. Obviously, over the last few months, the gyms simply haven't been accessible, and most of them are still not open now. So, it's tricky, obviously, to kind of do a lot of the stuff you want to do. Like me, myself, I don't particularly like going to a gym anyway. As a runner, I just like being in the outdoors and all that. But I think, there is a lot you could do just kind of at home or with, weights at home. So you don't have to be at a gym. Obviously, it probably helps with the kind of big lifts and like gradually building up to have like the big racks, I'm assuming. I mean, I don't know, but
again, it depends on, like I said, it depends on your goals. But I would say, yeah, you absolutely don't have to go to a gym, but you do need external load. That's the key. So yes, you could easily get some dumbbells and kettlebells for home. You don't have to be utilizing barbells. And like I said, all the strength for runners programs that I have, most of them, at least in the beginning, are all either bodyweight and dumbbell and kettlebell focused. But you've got to think of basic principles like we use in running of that progressive overload. Once we've done a certain distance, we obviously then want to make it even more challenging for ourselves by running a little bit further or running a little bit faster. Those same principles apply to strength training. So, if you're able to do 10 bodyweight squats, then going to 12 bodyweight squats isn't necessarily talking about strength now. We're starting to go more towards the realms of strength endurance. So if you want to get stronger, you need to be lifting more weight for that same amount of repetitions or dropping the reps down and going heavier with dumbbells or kettlebells. But again, an easy way to overcome having, a lack of big weights, as it were, is to do what I just said then and do the eccentrics. So if you've got some small dumbbells and you've done, let's say, some lunges for 6 to 8 per leg and you're feeling like they're quite easy, then the next step would be to keep that same weight. But every time you take a step and lower your knee to the ground, you take 3 or 4 seconds to do that.
Slow it down.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're building eccentric strength, which is good for absorbing force when you hit the ground and running, but also then it's making it more challenging on the body for just general strength anyway.
It's called time. Is it time under tension? It's referred to a lot of the time.
Yeah. Time under tension is kind of a reference in terms of bodybuilding because also by doing a longer rep or holding the muscles in contraction for longer, that time under tension also helps create more muscle damage. So therefore, you're more likely to then improve the size of that muscle as well. So that's what bodybuilders use a lot of tempo work and eccentrics and stuff like that for that reason. However, runners watching this now, don't think that just if you start doing some eccentrics, all of a sudden you're going to blow up because obviously these guys are all eating massive amounts of calorie surplus and all that sort of stuff. As a runner, it's very hard for you to put on massive amounts of muscle with the kind of diet regimes that we have and obviously the mileage that we do. So again, a lot obviously barrier straight away is a lot of people think they're going to get hench if they engage in proper strength training as a runner or cause them to slow down. But again, it's very hard to do that. I've been strength training since I was 16 years old and I'm still around the 72, 75 kilo mark.
It's
And that,
definitely a big barrier though. Like a lot of runners, I guess, including myself, years ago, just thought, if I go to the gym, start building muscle, you are going to slow down. There will be, of course, a certain point where that is true, but
definitely.
as you say, to get to that point, you're gonna first of all have to be doing the strength training for years, and you're gonna have to be doing, heavy weights consistently to even get close to that point,
Definitely.
before you tip over to getting slower. So yeah, you just gotta get it in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was the same as you, mate. Especially when I was in my early days in the military, I thought my strength training was my running for my lower body. So in the
Yeah.
gym, I just did upper body. I didn't touch squats or deadlifts or
Mm.
lunges or anything like that for quite a number of years, until, like I said, I started to meet a few people who were a lot faster than me, and kind of sort of trying to delve into why they were so much faster than me in terms of their running training. It was very similar to mine, but yet they were able to keep their speeds going for longer, or generate a little bit more faster sprint, especially when I was doing 3,000 meter steeplechase. And yeah, the big thing that I was missing was lower body strength training, and incorporating squats and deadlifts and single leg exercise into my training massively helped with my speed.
Yeah, I was just kind of moving on to a final kind of topic. Obviously we spoke a bit about kind of lower body, the importance, hips, glutes, legs. I'm interested to know more about kind of upper body. I myself, I do a lot of like calisthenics, if that's how you pronounce it, like push-ups,
Yeah,
pull-ups when the kind of outdoor gyms are open. Generic kind of bicep curls, that kind of thing. But I don't know really how that kind of impacts my running. If it's like useful, like is having a good chest like useful for running? I don't know.
depends if you're running with your top on or not.
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah, but I mean, I'd assume probably not really. I mean,
Well,
but
the thing is, obviously, when it comes to upper body, our arm drive is massively important. So one, that helps counter rotation. Two, it helps propulsion and obviously coordination, because obviously opposite arm move to the opposite leg and all that sort of stuff. So an efficient arm drive is important for running, and obviously having a good arm drive in terms of fatigue and stuff like that. A lot of the upper body postural muscles, especially on the back of the body, are going to be important to keeping that going. Equally, obviously, one of the basic cues that we always go to when it comes to running technique is to run tall. Some coaches
yeah,
use the analogy of, imagine you've got a piece of string in the top of your head and it's being pulled up to get you run nice and tall. Because again, that usually then means you're not collapsing through the hips, you're not overloading your lower back, and also you then tend to find that your stride becomes much better in terms of minimizing overstride. So again, to stay tall, if you've got weak muscles on the back of your body, then naturally you're just going to start hunching forward as they fatigue.
mm,
So in terms of upper body training, yes, maybe there's not an argument for developing your chest and your arms and stuff like that, but there's definitely an argument for developing your back. So,
yeah,
your lats, your traps, your rhomboids, your serratus, all that sort of stuff on the back, with things like pull ups, ring rows, one arm rows, bent over rows, basically any pulling exercise, I would argue is a massive importance for any runner, for posture, for shoulder health, because again, some runners get shoulder pain as well just from
mm.
their arm drives. And like I said, just from that keeping tall position, you want a good strong upper back and mid back.
Yeah, just interesting on posture. Like, obviously, as a student for the last 3 years, I'm usually at a desk, not necessarily doing work all the time, but I'm usually at a desk, whether I'm, watching YouTube or whatever. And, I just find myself looking in the mirror and I'm, hunched over. I'm probably hunched over now. And this will be the kind of case for a lot of people, especially over lockdown, working from home, sat at the desk. So I'm assuming that's probably going to have quite a significant impact, obviously on your posture, but then onto your running as
Yeah.
well. So do you do anything while you kind of sat down to kind of, get in the mindset I need to be like have decent posture and all that?
So obviously, being aware of it is one thing. So every now and again, like you said, if you catch yourself slouching forward, think about pulling the shoulders back and down. However, that's easier said than done, especially if you're deep into a bit of work and stuff like that. It's very hard for you to keep remembering that.
Mm,
The easiest thing to do instead is actually set a timer for maybe an hour, 2 hours at a time. Again, I know this depends on people's work environments and stuff like that, and
yeah.
just stand up, even if it's just for 30 seconds, and just do some shoulder rolls once you stood up. So
Right. Okay.
get out of your chair, stand up, just lift your shoulder blades up, pull them back, roll them down, So just rolling backwards. So basically like an arm swing, but without the actual arm swing itself. Just to open
Okay.
the chest a bit, roll the shoulder blades, get the shoulder blades moving freely on the back. And just do that for sort of, 20 reps and then sit back down and then just try and do that every couple of hours. I mean, if you can do more,
Yeah.
great, but even just getting the shoulders moving and having a little walk around will do wonders for keeping your hips mobile and obviously keeping that posture as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of like shoulder rolls. I've never kind
Yeah,
of done that. I've done like arm swings, obviously, but never shoulder rolls. So I'd probably had that to kind of my warm up and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah. So, and like I said, especially in an office or at work or whatever, it's just going to get less stares, isn't it? If you're just sort of out your chair and doing a few shoulder rolls, that's kind of a little bit more sort of commonly accepted than if you started swinging your arms all over the
Yeah, yeah.
in the middle of your office or whatever.
I have,
But
I
again,
have,
if you can though, so we talked about the dynamic stretches that we do in our run warm ups. Even if you could just do that like once or twice a day whilst at work, so just doing some arm circles and some leg swings again will do wonders for
yeah.
offsetting the amount of time you sat down.
Yeah, and there are obviously kind of devices as well. Like I got sent one the other week, like a posture corrector. I'm
Yeah,
just trying that out at the minute. To be fair, as soon as I put it on, it does make a noticeable difference.
yeah.
Um, so I guess I'll have to see if it kind of works for me in the long term. But yeah,
I mean, I'd be really interested to see because I've noticed you have been wearing it. I was actually going to ask you about it once you bought up posture. So
mm,
yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what feedback you have on that and what it does. Because even if it doesn't necessarily transfer over to you being aware of it while sat down, even if it just helps you be more aware of it whilst running, especially when fatigued, that could potentially be really good in terms of keeping
yeah,
efficient technique later on into long runs and bigger distances and stuff like that, where people
yeah.
start punching forward, even if they have got good posture and good strength. There's that element of fatigue that's going to kick in at some point where maybe form starts to drop a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see if that stops you from doing that.
Yeah, like I obviously won't be wearing it for runs, but because basically it's to make it work, it's quite tight when you put it on, so it forces you into kind of position. So I guess in a way it does kind of restrict your breathing a bit, so I wouldn't be able to wear it for runs. But as you said, it'll be interesting to see if it does help my running just generally from wearing it about.
Definitely.
Um, and yeah, I could just wear it under a t-shirt or on top of a t-shirt. And yeah, it looks like it doesn't look funny or anything. So yeah, it's fine really, yeah.
Nice.
So,
Cool.
so yeah, I think we've done pretty well there, I think. You
Yeah,
reckon?
definitely. I think so. Yeah, I mean, we talked about everything that we wanted to go through. Like I said, I think the key takeaway is if you're not warming up, make sure you start doing it. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
complex. And
Can be in your room if you
yeah,
don't want to do it outside.
and from an injury prevention standpoint, because running is very injurious. There's
Injurious, I like that word.
the stats out there that kind of again I've read a lot of literature that's 80% of runners get injured. That's a huge amount. In
Yeah.
terms of sports injuries, running is one of the highest. That includes things like rugby and American football, which
Mm.
are high impact sports. And then I read another stat last year that was up to 50% of people get an injury every year of
Yeah.
running.
I can totally agree with
Uh,
most, like pretty much anyone I talk to, apart from yourself, of course, have had an injury at some point. So yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy. I still don't know how you've done that. No injuries at
but
all. But
again, it's all the stuff we've just talked about today. I've been doing since I was 16. I've
yeah,
made sure I've warmed up. I've made sure I've done my mobility work and my strength training. Yes, obviously I've learned along the way to improve and train a little bit smarter, but I've still been trying to lay those foundations from a very young age. And so, I'm not old by any stretch, but I've been running since I was, like I said, sort of properly since I was 16, but I actually started it when I was about 7. And I'm 34 now, and I've not had a single running related injury.
yeah,
Uh,
that's mental, but good for you, man. Good for you.
but again, it's just practicing what I preach. It's I don't just tell people to do this stuff because I think it's the latest thing and the fad. It's because I genuinely believe in it because of one, I've utilized it with so many people as a coach, and two, I've done it on myself for years and reaped the benefits. During lockdown, like you said there, the amount of people that reached out to me with calf issues, shin splints, hip pain, foot pain, and stuff like that, and through a bit of an assessment with them online, getting to
Mm.
understand a bit about them straight away, my main prescription is always going to be some sort of mobility work or strength work. And if we're on the right track, you'll see change within weeks. You know,
Mm.
I've had a guy recently who was in calf pain all the time when he went out for runs, and we just got him to do some calf capacity work, a bit of strength on the hamstrings, and now he's back up to running 10 miles without any issues whatsoever. Obviously, he built that distance up. He didn't just go straight back to 10 miles, but
Yeah.
just it's just being smart. That's the key thing. We all love to run. We all love to get outdoors, like you said, and we don't like being in gyms. But if you want to continue running, especially into your older age, where injury risk increases just from being older, then resistance training of some form needs to be a part of your training program. It's just as important as your tempos, your sprints, your long runs, or anything like that. It's just as important, which is why the professionals do it as well.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Very interesting as well. I think it'd be good in future episodes to talk about just barriers, why are people not doing it, go through a few of them.
But yeah, and we get again, it'd be good for people to chuck us some messages or some comments and stuff after this video and say, what are the barriers? Because then we can talk about them in the next episode and address them and help people overcome them.
Yeah, I'll probably put a poll up on Instagram as well, just see what people are saying.
Definitely.
Go for that. But yeah, I think we'll end it there.
Yeah.
Thanks again for obviously being here, and thanks to everyone that's hopefully watching. Let us know what you think. We're really enjoying these, and it's just a good way to kind of have a kind of longer format, as I said, and talk about these kind of issues. But yeah, thanks again for watching. And we should be back next week with another few topics. If you got any suggestions, just let us know. DM, comments. Your YouTube channel, The Intrepid Athlete, right? And Instagram.
Yeah.
Perfect. So feel free to check out Lee as well. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.